Right, guys, we just lost 2-1 to the Scummers, and yeah, I'm going to try and break this down how I saw it. It was one of those games. It looked like a kind of a carbon copy of the West Ham game and the Chelsea game, where just from the very first minute we were just sat off them, and we were slower to the ball, slower to the second ball. We were almost that same thing that we've seen so often this season, haven't we? Where for the first 15, 20 minutes we're just like trying to weather a storm, and then we may start getting into it and get control of the game. But we barely got a touch in that first 15, 20 minutes. I think they hit the post a couple times. They were getting in behind like at will. They were skinning Doherty each, every time he was getting turned inside out. They were really, that's where they were targeting in those areas. I'm going to come on to him in a minute. And it was just like, it was only because of some last rear guard action, especially Toby was actually doing really well, I thought, and even Sanchez was putting in some his typical last ditch type of blocks and tackles and stuff like that. So at that point you were thinking, we're holding them out, we're weathering a storm, we're getting away with it, but we could maybe nick a goal. But we never really even looked like scoring, if I'm being honest, in that first half. And of course we got the goal, and what a goal that was by Lamela. I mean, it's such a shame that couldn't win the game, because that is world class. That's kind of what we bought him for, that is the Lamela that we hoped we'd see when we bought him from Roma. I mean, it was just incredible. His right foot must be that bad. He just refuses that right foot. And it was brilliant to see Reguilon's reaction to that goal. I mean, it was just, that's actually how Davies reacted to Lamela's goal in Europa all those years ago when he did the first Rabona. But that's about it when it comes to positivities for the game, if I'm being honest with you. It was just, it was lackluster. It was just like the Chelsea game, like the West Ham game, like the second half performances when we've been a goal up against most teams this year. And it's a real shame, because I thought we may have just turned the corner and we got a new mentality, and we started to put in much better performances. But it just looked leggy, it looked tired, it looked jaded. I mean, I actually said this about Son. I said he's been way off the boil the last 4 or 5 games. Came in for a bit of stick when I first said that. People saying that, oh no, Son's been brilliant. But, I could see that he was slowing down. I could see that he'd lost the mojo. And I even said, like last week or a couple of weeks ago, I said he's going to have a big injury if we're not careful, because I can tell when players are going to get injured because they go really leggy. And I can actually see Højbjerg might get injured soon as well. So I hope that Jose and his staff can see this and start rotating a bit better, because I think that the Europa game's now coming to bite us, with this, because I think he could have potentially, I know it's a hindsight thing, but playing Kane up to the 80th minute and then playing him today, I think it didn't work for us. Probably could have used Vinicius maybe even, and then brought Kane on in the last 20 minutes against Zagreb potentially. But for me, Kane was the worst player on the pitch, along with maybe Bale. I thought Kane was just trotting around like a show pony in the first half. I think he's still worried about his his injuries. His little niggly injuries that he's had. He had one last week, midweek against Zagreb, so maybe he's a bit conscious of that. But because he didn't have that, he wasn't closing the ball down fast enough. So it meant that they were just, being able to push up really easily. I thought Bale was anonymous as well, and he looked sort of perplexed why he came off. But he just wasn't able to get into the game whatsoever. Ndombele wasn't able to get into the game either. Maybe he's showing a little bit of burnout at the moment as well. They were really snuffing out the areas to stop us from playing. They were putting us into dead ends very, very well. But I still felt as though we had enough, in personnel-wise to beat them. They did play well, but we just didn't. There was no passage of play. There was no movement. There was no, making little triangles through the midfield to bring the ball out. There's no transition, through the midfield. It was just kind of like very predictable, poor, pings forward, or just trying to like feed off scraps and stuff like that. So that was not good. I have to say it was not good. I thought Mora Sexual, I think he has been one of the best players over the last 4 or 5 games. I think he's been one of the most consistently good players over the last stretch of games. And I was actually, when Son came off, I know like a lot of the Arsenal AFT fans were screaming like it was a goal. But for me, I wasn't actually too disappointed when Lamela came on, because I knew that's exactly what we needed. Someone that was going to like really press and hound the play, really put the shitters up Arsenal, And so when he came on, he added in that bit of pressing that we were missing. And so it was him and Mora that were really showing the only ones that were really showing that, in the game. So those two worked really hard. I think Mora won about 7 fouls throughout the game. He was actually really positive on the ball. He was jinking through players, ghosting between players, doing those little dribbles. He was the only one really sort of penetrating lines, if you know what I mean. So he was really good. Lloris, Yeah, I mean, we're seeing the decline of Lloris. I'm not going to mention too much about him today, but he looked a little bit nervy. His distribution's been poor, and he was just a little bit flappy and he's sort of just a little bit rash. And then yeah, Doherty. Let's come back onto Doherty. I'm sorry, but he's a poor man's Alan Hutton. He is. He's not good going forward. He's not good at defending. He got turned for their first goal. He just got turned inside out. All you've got to do is show him back inside. As a defender, what you've got to make sure you don't do is let him get past you. You just got to make sure that you cover that side and you force him back inside. And then you hope that they kind of go across the pitch in like a crescent shape. You kind of stop them penetrating towards the danger areas. But he just like let him straight in behind him, and it was a bit of a lucky goal, I suppose, because they got a deflection. But that goal was coming, because it was like wave after wave. So for me, Doherty, I don't understand why I didn't play Aurier. I think Aurier's far the superior defender, wing back, full back, whatever you want to call it. Even though I don't think Aurier is the real deal, I think he's definitely he's the lesser of the evils for me. So I don't understand that. I mean, maybe the lack of rotation is coming to haunt us a little bit. I think that the Europa game, I think he went a little bit too strong in that game in terms of the lineup, and I think Kane then suffered because of that today. Son, obviously the last few games he's played, I think he started every Premiership game this season. So I think you can't get away with that for the whole season. You may for the first half of season, but you've really got to start rotating it. So Jose Mourinho's got to come into a lot of questions. I think his substitutions is very questionable today. But generally, I mean, for me, the thing that's most worrying about today, I'm not really going to call out the individual errors, even though Sanchez is one. You could say that's an individual error, but I do believe that Lacazette swipes at the ball, he completely whiffs it, and it would have probably gone out for a goal kick, and then Sanchez goes into him. So I'm not completely sure about the ruling on that. But they gave a yellow card, so clearly, it was a mistake by Sanchez, and it's annoying because in my in the hot spar with Sim, we were talking about Sanchez and we were talking about how well he's been playing lately, and I was saying that he's been putting in these like last ditch tackles and he's been happening to time it perfectly. But if up against the big teams, there's a little margin for error that you don't have against these big teams. And we'll see what happens against Arsenal. And I worried that he would give away a foul or a penalty or something like that. And that's what happened. So yeah, that is, I guess, what you're going to get with Sanchez, unfortunately. But he has been playing pretty solidly for the last few weeks. And I would keep him and Toby together, despite that mistake, because I still think they're not the biggest problem in the team right now. Højbjerg, yeah, I mean, I think he's starting to feel the effects of the whole season. He's also been playing a lot of games. So, you can't be too hard on him either, because he's been a real warrior, hasn't he, this season? And then I don't know who else we can talk about, really. Lamela, yeah, it's a bit harsh, I guess. I mean, for me, that arm was no different to the one that, if you look at the Man United game earlier this season, when that goes into Martial's neck or face, they didn't give it, but they gave it today. So maybe that is kind of like karma, I guess, swings and roundabouts. I thought it was a little bit soft, but at the same time, it's a little bit clumsy as well. But I also did like Lamela for his energy and his work rate, and he showed that passion, that Latin passion, and he showed that aggression, which is what we actually needed this game. So I'm not going to be too harsh on Lamela either. I actually thought when he came off, we looked the better side. I thought for the last 10 minutes, we actually showed as though we might have nicked something. I think a lot of that was down to the fact that Arsenal moved into a low block, so we're able to move through the midfield a lot more easily. Kane was a bit unlucky not to get that free kick, hit the post, and of course Sanchez got the rebound, and then it went into, I think Gabriel got the clearance, which is a bit unlucky as well. It was just going to be one of those games where we weren't going to get anything out of it at that point. And then a couple of moments towards the end, but the game was done and dusted. So summary basically is, we were poor, we were leggy. We just don't tend to do well against the bigger teams. We're doing well against the lower league opposition, but when we come up against a team that can play, and I hate to say it, but Arsenal can move the ball around, quite well. Then we do come unstuck, and we've seen that. We've seen that with a lot of the top teams that we played this year. We don't seem to be able to get a grip of the game. We're not able to control the game. We don't really look like hurting the opposition against these big teams, when we've played them. So that's a bit of a worry. But I would say that Arsenal did play well. They pressed well. They were the better team. They did deserve to win. As much as that, pains me to say, they did deserve the victory. So anyway, we move on, guys. We move on. Look, there's still I've been talking to a few people today, and they're still optimistic. So why shouldn't we be? You know, like, we are a bit hot and cold, or a bit hit and miss. So maybe we could still go on a bit of a run after this, and you know, pick up the performances and get the mentality right again. We're still in 2 cup competitions, so you know, let's keep fighting. All right, guys, take care.